For some odd reason, when it comes to fertility issues, the focus is usually on the women and not on the men. And yeah, of course, we don't just supply the egg, but also the incubator. However, that does not justify the fact that when you are having trouble conceiving, that you're being looked at more than the hubster. So in this video, I am sharing the known and not so known 7 sperm killers. Hello lovelies, and welcome to another one of my videos in which I'll be sharing with you 7 known and not so known sperm killers. You have asked me to do videos on male fertility, so I thought I'd do this first video that I based on a blog that I wrote a while back. Sperm killer number 1, stress. Yes, let's talk about the most obvious one first, right? I'm sure you've thought about this too, but let me explain to you why this is such a big issue for guys. I've talked on this channel a lot about adrenal health and how it influences your fertility, because if we produce stress hormones, it's always at the expense of our sex hormones. And that includes things like FSH to mature an egg and LH to trigger ovulation. Well, guess what? These 2 hormones are equally important for sperm production. And when it comes to testosterone, if a guy is producing more stress hormones, it will also be at the expense of testosterone. So when it comes to treating stress homeopathically, I look at supporting the same glands as for you. Well, except for the ovaries bit. So I look at the hypothalamus, I look at the anterior pituitary gland, the adrenal glands, and then of course the testes themselves need support, which is the same as when I would be supporting your ovaries. Quite a few studies are out there already that have shown that stress significantly impacts the quantity and the quality of sperm. However, there's another specific thing that is a big issue when it comes to fertility, not just the quality and the quantity, but stress in our bodies causes oxidative stress. And the simple way to explain oxidative stress is that it is a disruption of the metabolism of cells to effectively detox. So if your man is already struggling with some sort of toxicity, whether it is prescription drugs or recreational drugs or metals or you name it, stress on top of it will make it even more difficult, because the oxidative stress causes the body to not detox properly. There are more free radicals in his body, which attacks the cells and also the sperm cells. A really important thing that I prescribe to guys therefore as well as women is vitamin C. So that's always part of my program. If you need some inspiration on how to reduce stress, then make sure to check out my adrenal fatigue and hypothyroidism playlist. I will link it up here as well as down below. Those videos apply to both men and women basically. Sperm killer number 2 is a history of malaria or the use of malaria drugs. Now this is not so common. A lot of you may have traveled to other countries and have either contracted malaria or have had malaria drugs, and you're not aware of the effects on male fertility, while studies have already shown this extensively. In the third world, unfortunately, this is a lot more known because malaria is so much more prevalent there, but it's really important that you're aware of this if you have a history of either having the disease or having had the drugs. Now, there's not a lot I can say that you can do at home about this, but homeopathically, this can be addressed by a homeopath. You can either detox the malaria drugs if you've had it in the past, or if you have been unwell ever since having malaria, then that is something that needs to be addressed, which you can do with homeopathic treatment from a qualified practitioner. Sperm killer number 3 are infections. And I'm talking about STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, and candida, both of those. And when it comes to the STDs, it doesn't even need to be active right now. It can also be an STD that is left untreated from a while ago. That can totally ruin your fertility. It can mean that the sperm is killed off before it actually enters a woman's body. And for women, it can cause mucus buildup in the fallopian tubes, meaning that sperm isn't able to swim up, or that a fertilized egg isn't even able to come down, or that it then implants into a fallopian tube, causing an ectopic pregnancy. So if either of you have had more bed partners than just each other, then do yourselves a favor and get yourself checked out to make sure that that is not something that is playing a role for you. Again, this is something that you can look at homeopathically as well, alongside any other treatment that you've been given. And when it comes to Candida, there's a lot more that you can do. Candida is not a sexually transmitted disease, although you can kind of keep the Candida alive amongst each other. So you need to make sure that if maybe you're struggling with thrush, that your man also gets treated for Candida. The thing is that for a man, often it is asymptomatic. He doesn't notice the same annoying stuff that you do. But there are a few clues that will give away that he is definitely struggling with Candida overgrowth. One is a diet that has high levels of sugar, alcohol, or caffeine, because that will bring up your sugar levels that feeds the Candida. Another one is he may suffer with digestive issues, bloating, diarrhea, constipation and diarrhea alternating, all that jazz. Another clue is that he may often suffer from athlete's foot or ringworm. Crotch itch is one of them, or with fungal toenails. That is a dead giveaway that there are fungal issues going on. Even if he hasn't been diagnosed with ringworm, but he often gets these circular patches on his body, discolorations, that is also a fungus, and that is often not recognized. So again, that's a clue for you guys as well. And there's another thing that is not so well known, but that I see a lot in clinic, and that is if there has been a history of the use of cannabis. And I know this is the case for a lot of people. They may have used it in their teens or their 20s, or they still like to use it every now and then, regardless of whether it's legal or not in your country. But if you have a history of that, then chances are that Candida has a lot more chance to overgrow in your body. And as I said, there's a lot that you can do about Candida, and I think I'll do a video on this topic in the future because there's a lot to say about it. But first of all, a low intake of sugar is a very good start, because Candida feeds on sugar, and on stress, because stress brings up sugar levels and the Candida can just overgrow even if you're not having sweets or candy or any of that. Sperm killer number 4 is the past use of steroids or current use of steroids. Now, steroids are used for lots of different things. Again, it depends on where you live as well, but it is very commonly used in eczema cream. So if your man has a history of eczema, then he may have had it then, or if he's had asthma or still has asthma and he uses inhalers. Not so much the blue and the green ones, but the brown, orange, red types, those will contain steroids. But it's also possible that he's had some sort of infection and that the steroids were prescribed alongside antibiotics. I know that this is a lot more common in Northern America than it is, for example, in Europe, but these are just the clues of where he may have gotten the steroids. And the thing with steroids is that they're synthetic hormones, so they affect the entire hormonal system, and that effect can last because it disrupts the system, and that disruption can last even beyond the period that you're taking these things. And the only way that you can deal with that disruption, as far as I know, the only way that you can deal with that disruption is detoxing that homeopathically. And again, seek out a qualified practitioner to help you with that. Sperm killer number 5 is metal toxicity, and this is what I see a lot in my clinic. I think I still need to do a video on this topic, but if you're interested, have a look on my website. I've got quite a few articles on the topic, because metal toxicity is a huge issue for a lot of my patients. It affects the quality of sperm, and sometimes that's reflected in test results, but sometimes it isn't, and all that happens is basically nothing. Or even worse, I mean, I think it's worse, and that's that you guys suffer with recurring miscarriages. So those are 2 huge clues for the fact that you may be suffering with mental toxicity, either just your man or you both. Unfortunately, this thing about metal toxicity isn't as known as I wish it was, because it's a lot easier to solve than a lot of people know. And that is, again, through homeopathic detox. I know that there are lots of programs out there to do this detoxing with supplements and with herbs. And yes, of course these work, otherwise these things wouldn't exist, but they are very hard on the body. They take out a lot of energy. There are a lot of aggravations for the patients, and this is much less so with homeopathic remedies. Some people don't even have any aggravations at all. So homeopathy is a lot more gentle. The way that you can pick up on metal toxicity is through a hair mineral test, not so much a blood test, because if metals are high in the blood, then basically you're already hospitalized. Your body is going to try and keep the metals as far away from your important organs as possible, including your blood. So it's going to try and dump it in the hair first. But then if that doesn't work anymore, it's going to hide it everywhere in your organs. And this is why sometimes the test results don't actually show that you have metal toxicity when you do. So it's important that when you do a hair mineral test, that you have it interpreted by somebody that is able to recognize hidden metal toxicity by looking at the mineral transport, so the ratios between the different minerals. Because sometimes in the hair you won't actually see mercury, but there's definitely an imbalance in the mineral transport, which will tell you that mercury is hiding in the thyroid, in the adrenals, in the brain, in the liver, you name it. With a lot of my patients though, we don't even do the hair mineral test because their case already shows that there most likely is metal toxicity, and all we do is the metal detox, and then they conceive and they have their happy babies. So it's not always necessary to do the test if there are plenty of clues that show you towards metal toxicity. And those things are recurring miscarriages, as I said, possibly a sperm analysis test that shows that the quality of the sperm isn't very good. If either of you have had silver dental filling, so the amalgam in the past or currently, then that is a clue that there will be metal toxicity. If you eat anything cooked in tin foil or have eaten from aluminum pans, or if you use aluminum deodorant, that will definitely cause metal toxicity. Another clue is that if you have recurring abscesses that heal very poorly, or like tooth abscess, for example, or ulcers, whether that's on your body or in your mouth, that is often an indication of metal toxicity as well. And then of course, you've also got very obvious things, like some of my patients say that they perspire and it smells like metal, or their urine smells like metal. That's also an indication. You're also, of course, more at risk of having metal contamination in your body if you live in the city, if you work with heavy metals, or if you're currently smoking or have smoked in the past. Sperm killer number 6 is past inflammations, mumps, or trauma to the testicles. And they may seem oddly grouped together, but the result is the same, and that's damage to the testicles. Boys that get mumps can get orchitis, which is an inflammation of the testicles, and that can cause shrinkage of the testicles. So you can see, how are the testicles going to function properly if there's shrinkage? And it's the same when it comes to any kind of inflammation or any kind of trauma that can cause scarring, and that really affects the sperm production, obviously. If a guy isn't sure if he's had an inflammation to the testicles in the past, then he probably hasn't had it, because I know from my patients the agony that they are in when they have an inflammation, and how extremely relieved they are when I give them the right homeopathic remedies and it is resolved. So the cool thing about homeopathy is that it can address both a current inflammation and the results of inflammation in the form of scarring, just as we can do that with women with fallopian tube scarring. Sperm killer number 7 is varicocele. And I call this secret and not so secret, because the thing is that varicocele is often mentioned as a huge infertility block. However, most of my patients that have this, their doctors have told them that it doesn't affect their fertility at all. However, I don't buy that because a varicocele is basically a varicose vein of the scrotum. And a varicose vein is wider than a normal vein. It is bigger. So as a result, there's more blood going through that area. If there's more blood going through that area, that means that the area, the tissue around it, heats up. And the last thing we want is for those little swimmers to be heated up, right? This is why we talk about loose-fitting briefs and no jacuzzi for the mister when you're trying to conceive. So I really believe that a varicocele is something that you shouldn't overlook. So the way that I treat the guys that have varicocele is the same way that I would treat somebody that has varicose veins in their legs or that suffers with hemorrhoids, and I am surprised time and time again how homeopathy can actually help shrink down those veins, and quite quickly as well. So there you have it. Those are the 7 known and maybe not so known sperm killers. I hope this encourages you as well, that there's a lot that can be done and that can be looked at to treat your man as well, to make sure that you are both in the best position possible to receive that baby. If you're interested in watching more videos on increasing your chances of falling pregnant naturally, then make sure to click on the playlist on your screen right now, and also make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and hit the notification bell, because I bring out new fertility videos every Thursday. And in the meantime, see you in the next video. Bye!